All right. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. So yeah, we would like to talk today about a little bit of our journey in Broadpeak.io, the API video platform that we launched 2 weeks ago, on how we use SCTE224 to build that API. And a full disclaimer before we start, I'm not a professional public speaker, so sorry about that. I'm also have a very thick French accent. I think, Lionel, you may understand better than everyone else, but you know, so I'll do my best. Typically, when we are like in the same place, I try to pay for the first one when we go to the bar after, but I cannot do that tonight. But next time we will be able to do it. All right. Okay, so a little bit of an agenda before we start. We'd like to start with a quick introduction, just to introduce you about Broadpeak and Broadpeak.io, the platform that we are going to talk about. Second part of the presentation is going to be about the API itself. What was our journey from the conception to the different choice we made to build the API, and the part about the implementation itself. Then after, we'll go into more details around SCTE224. Some of you may know pretty well SCTE224, may have like touched, for example, SCTE35, which is like quite popular in the streaming industry. So we'll go back a little bit to that. We'll explain the concept and what it can do and how we use it as part of our API. Then we will have a part when we get into application of the API in real use cases. And then finally, we will finish with next steps. So very quickly, Broadpeak in a nutshell. Broadpeak is a French company founded in 2012. We develop software for the video, what I call the video streaming data plane. We don't do any transcoding, but we do origination, you know, packaging, encryption, and distribution. So, you know, like basically like CDN. And I think we are quite famous for the different projects we do with service providers, such as cable operators, telcos, and mobile operators. Basically, we are quite, you know, our business is really related to anyone owning their own network with their own infrastructure. And this is where we deployed our technology. So typically we do origin packager. If you are looking to deploy a cloud PVR service, we can help you with that. If you have your own network and you want to deploy your own CDN, we can help you with that as well. We typically complement that with a technology called multicast ABR, which is helping to use multicast for HLS and Dash. So that's what we are famous for, right? And the last 10 years, we were quite successful in that. But then beginning of last year, basically, I got mission to find a way to mainstream a little bit our technology. Basically, since we started, it was more than 10 years that we were developing a lot of advanced streaming technologies. And most of them were for tier 1 pay TV operators, and with very complex workflows and all of that. And we realized last year, in the middle of COVID, that a lot of change happened in the web in particular. And I think like a few years back, we were saying like the software was eating the world. And now with COVID, we were realizing that like video was eating the world itself. Like most of the traffic you'll see on the web right now is video. The video is not about like being ESPN or, you know, like Spectrum or Comcast anymore. Everyone can be his own media. Everyone needs to have somehow a video strategy. The problem we have is like most of these people, they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the network for doing it, but they still need to have like more sophisticated solution to do video, because video is quite complex and you want to distribute it very well. So what we have done is like in January 2021, we created a team called Cloud Platform, and we start developing our first API video platform called Broadpeak.io. And Broadpeak.io basically has been out since 2 weeks now, so it's pretty new. I encourage every one of you to take a look out, but it has been basically built over like 4 pillars. First thing is like what we were looking to build was not only, you know, like a service online. It was really about building a platform with an API. Okay, and the idea behind it was to embrace what we see a current movement in the video industry, which empowers a lot the DevOps, right? And DevOps, from my perspective, they love to build on top of API platform because it's giving them a lot of agility, giving them the capacity to test super quickly without going through a sales process and all of that. So we were looking to get into this. Right? In the industry, we have very famous examples such as Mux. The idea was to be a little bit in that model, right? Then the idea also was to provide a good service, a good care. But the idea was not like to do like a typical service. The idea was to do something like self-serve, right? And auto scaling for our customers with instant access. But keeping a little bit the same curve that we have right now with our big operators, which are our customers, with something like 24/7, with a lot of local people to help our customers. And finally, the third pillar was to provide something advanced with like very advanced streaming workflows. There's a lot of, again, like API video platform right now. In the idea is not really to compete with them. We don't really want to be, you know, in the same position as like providing transcoding. There's a lot of super smart companies doing it. So we don't really want to compete on that. What we really go with is to provide advanced technology for advanced streaming workflow. And finally, the idea is to provide the apps little by little, one by one. So you can build with us. You can start a first project with us, and then you can build with us. So let's finish with the boring part, and let's go a little bit into the what we have done to build that video API. So at first, you know, like the focus was to build a platform, and one of the focus we got at first was really to build something frictionless. So we put a lot of effort on the UX and the UI. We created a web app to onboard our customers, so the customers can very quickly get into our platform, test the technology, do, you know, like some demos very quickly. But we knew that it was not sufficient, right? The second step was also to provide an API, because an API helped to scale the project. And we got under a lot of influence coming from Stripe, from Shopify. We got exactly the same kind of API. We got super influenced by that, and the idea was to replicate that, you know, like on our scale, right? Then after, what was important was to provide a knowledge center. Again, because it's a self-serve platform, the idea was to let the customers, you know, like run by themselves the technology, to troubleshoot it also by themselves as much as possible, and to test it very quickly. And you'll see that a little bit later, but between the API and the knowledge center, we try to have like a super strong correlation. So, you know, every time we change something on the API, you can test automatically the API on the knowledge center. And again, the idea was like to have in mind that we start with the first application, which is around content replacement. I'll come back to that. But the idea is like tomorrow, if we add more application, everything follow, right? The web app, the API, and the knowledge center. So now let's focus on the API and the knowledge center. So basically, we've got like a few decisions to make when we were thinking about the API. Like, first of all, is like, what did we want to achieve? And of course, you know, like creating an API sounds obvious, but the idea was like to make the API as part of our product development process. You know, like not thinking after, you know, like proposing the product, but really as part of our product development, we were thinking about our API. And the idea was to have something a little bit complicated to put in place, because we were proposing advanced technology, but we wanted to keep it simple, right? So it was all about like having the right level of abstraction in our API. And, you know, now that you say that, like what needs to be considered? And what needs to be considered, first of all, is like API, you have a lot of different ways to do it. The first way is you can say like, oh, I'm going to build my own API, I'm going to be fully proprietary, and people are going to develop on top of it. Well, that's an approach, and giving you a lot of flexibility, The problem is like also it makes your customers super sticky with you, and that's not a good thing in the best of the world, right? So the idea was to try to be a little bit less stickiness and see if there's like some standards that we can basically reuse to be part of our API. That was the first point. Second point is also making sure that like that API was, I would say, versatile enough to address all of our needs and also what we have in mind for later. And finally, like the API has to be like in a way kind of global, not only like focused on one region and answering the need of one region. Broadpeak is a super global company, so the idea was also like to be able to address like needs from different regions. So we came up with a shopping list to build that API, and we realized that we were looking to have an API around video. First of all, able to help us to create, read, update, and delete any kind of like video services. And when I talk about video services, it can be a linear channels. Our customers, like they do live. It can be on-demand content. Some of our customers like SVOD providers. So any kind of like video has to be managed in the API. It has to be able to manage an audience. That's part of our strategy, is like to help our customers to like do the differentiation between the customers in a specific location or using a specific device or using codec. We want to help them with that. So the management of the audience was super important. The fact that you can enforce rules and policies, and based on the content itself, but also based on the audience. And the last part was a close integration, a close native integration with inbound metadata. When you think about like the video streaming industry, we have a lot of metadata inside the video itself. I'm sure like most of you are, like work every day with SCTE224. Our idea was also to make sure our API can complement SCTE224, can work easily with SCTE224, right? So now that we discussed about like the choice we made like for the API, we built the API. I'll come back to that, but we use SCTE224 for it, and we implemented it in our system. What is important is with Broadpeak.io, we were looking to target DevOps, and so we were looking to make it enjoyable for them to use our platform. And so we tried to make the thing like super interactive, meaning that like right now you can go to the Knowledge Center and test within seconds. With an API key, you can directly test the API inside the Knowledge Center. We have like dynamic code snippets, so based on what you like as a language, you can also like try with different language. We put a lot of effort on API definition and the capacity to give good API logs and error messages. The way that we work is basically in our development process, we use Swagger. It's more famous as Swagger, but it's OpenAPI 3. And so we develop the API as part of our process, and we push a JSON file to a tool what is called readme.io, which is actually like the base, the framework we use for our Knowledge Center, right? So everything is automated. Every time we do a new update of the API, is automatically creating a new version on the Knowledge Center, and so people also can follow the different version of the API. So now we will talk about SCTE224 and why we use SCTE224 as part of our API. Very, very quickly, I'll not go too much into the details, but I think it's good to remind everyone what is SCTE. SCTE it's kind of a society for experts in cable operators. It's been there since a long time, like as long as cable, basically. And I think it's relevant in streaming, even though, like, again, it's coming from cable. It's relevant for streaming because it, video is also coming from cable in a way. And it has been, like, used for certification and standardization, of course. But there's also a show that they organize every year, or not since like COVID, of course, but which help also like to discover like new innovation around around video and around cable. The good thing about SCTE is like it's not super, I mean, it's American centric, of course, but also it's got a good collaboration, good cooperation with international organization. And so what is used, what get out from SCTE also can also be popularized outside of the US. Again, SCTE35 is a good example of that. So what's the concept of SCTE224? So the standard is basically, it's fully XML. It has been named also ESNI, if you heard that in the past, Event Scheduling and Notification Interface. Originally, SCTE224, the main concept was to help pay TV operators to move to OTT. Okay, most of the pay TV operators were using broadcast cable, or they were using multicast transport stream in MPEG-2, for instance. And of course, all of these guys were looking also to target more screens, like people over internet, blah, blah, blah. And so they had to move to IP, to move to adaptive bitrate streaming protocols such as HLS or Dash. And so SCTE224 has been designed in that way. What is inside is a description of a schedule that you can have, for instance, in a service such as a linear channel. It gives a lot of information. It can give you, information on the timing, information, metadata for each media, give you information for, blackout and alternative content information. It describes the audience. I'll come back to that. And it associates viewing policies. Okay. What is interesting with the standard itself is you can basically use different layers. You can have a rule by default that you apply to any kind of media. And then after, on the fly or something scheduled in advance, you can apply specific policies or specific rules. So it really, in the sense of doing an API, which is something that you want to be super real time, it helps with that. And SCTE224, on top of the scheduling part, it helps also for new use cases such as targeted advertisement. I'll come back to this too. So if you think about SCTE224 and I would say the data way that you can illustrate it, you have different terms, different definitions, which are the base of the API. Right. First of all, is the media, and the media it can be any kind of video content. Then the media point. The media point is basically a subpart of that media, so it can be a program in a linear channel, for instance. Then you have the policy. The policy is what you want to apply to a specific media point, and you can have a subtract of that. Then you have the audience. The audience, can be people in a specific region or people with a specific device, for instance. Then you have some action. What do you want to apply to an audience? And that's a combination of an audience and an action is a viewing policy. And then you have the concept of audit, which is giving back some analytics to the people who want to enforce some policies. You'll see that the media point is actually pretty interesting because it's giving you a timeline, right? It's giving you a start time and an end time. And this can be fully out of band. That's what SCTE224 is giving you. But it can also be correlate with SCTE35. Okay, that's really, one of the strengths of SCTE224 is you have a good way, to get and to complement information coming from inside the video itself. SCTE35 really help because also it can do something frame accurate. Of course, SCTE224 doesn't give you that possibility. So if I try to represent a little bit the data model is a more graphical way. I was looking to make an example. So I create for you a media in New York, very French influenced. So it's a linear channel. You have a regular programming. You are watching the live, and you are watching Emily in Paris. You fantasize to live in Paris now. That's great. Then there's a Knicks game coming up. But the problem is you are living in New York, and you may know, but in the US you have some rules around blackout, and it has been invented a long time ago, actually, for the Indy 500. But the idea is to say if you are living in New York, it's going to be very hard for you to watch the Knicks on TV because we want you to pay for the tickets and go directly to the arena. So that's what SCTE224 can help you with, is can help you basically to have a media point inside the media. So you know when the Knicks game start and when it stops. And you know that you can apply a policy to it. And the policy in that case is like for everyone in New York, you are going to be blackout and we are going to replace the Knicks game by something else, right? Can be another linear channels, can be a slate, can be a VOD, whatever, right? You apply that policy. Then after that media point, you come back to the original programming. Again, very French influenced. You can watch Arsène Lupin and it looks great and you pass a very good time. So that's the kind of like data model applied to a specific use case that the SCTE224 brings to you. So it's what it is interesting for us because it creates it design, you know, like the media itself. It design, you know, like a start time and an end time. It design also some policy and some audience that you can apply to it. So again, policy is action. It's an action plus an audience, right? And so you'll see that like in SCTE224, there's a lot of different concepts that you have in one of the criteria. And it's really interesting for us because it opened a lot of windows, a lot of doors actually to what we want to propose to our customers. So blackout, the use case I just explained, I'll come back to it in a little bit. It's one, but you can basically imagine sky is the limit. You can imagine a lot of different policies you want to apply based on what you programmers want to put in place, right? So for us, it was great in terms of like looking at the next step. Okay, we start and propose with our Broadpeak IO platform, you know, like content replacement application. Now in the future, we can do even better than that, right? We can propose more advanced streaming workflows. So if I try to summarize a little bit, is why SCTE224 was a good fit for us. It's a good reason because 224 is kind of it's a very rich standard with an extensive list of capabilities where you can define action and audience. Okay, and it doesn't need to be super comprehensive. Is going like straight to the point. It can do a lot and it solve a lot of our pain points to basically modelize that. Okay, good thing also is like it's a standard. So of course it avoids the Broadpeak stickiness that I don't really want to push to my vendors, to my customers. It's really largely adopted in the US. SCTE224 is used by, example, like Fubo, for instance, is using it. Hulu is using it. Most of the programmers are using it as well. ESPN is using it. Sinclair is using it. So, you know, in the industry, most likely you will find people who understand and know what is SCTE224. And it's simple enough, you know, like to provide us a good base for our API. Again, like keeping in mind as the first slide that we were looking for simplicity. SCTE224 bring that, so we like it. And at the end of the day, it's an API like any other one, right? And for us, the idea was to build an API. We use SCTE224 as part of our API subset, and we are super happy with it because we think that it is going to also make customers we look at the API and we'll be happy to have a standard as part of it. There are still some challenges. SCTE224, one of the problems is like when you work in IP and streaming and ABR in particular, you know that like you need to deal with a lot of variants, you know, HLS, Dash, several ways to do the encryption, different version of HLS, blah, blah, blah. SCTE224 has no awareness at all of this. There is an awareness on the media itself. Okay, so you have like ESPN, that's fine. You know that it's a media, but you don't know like if it's ESPN, HLS v4, if it's Dash, you know, like numbering, you know, you have no concept around that. So you have to build that conceptualization into your API. Some of the concepts are pretty limited. I think in terms of security, SCTE224 don't do anything around, you know, like impersonation. You know, man in the middle of this kind of stuff. So it's super important you work on the security on the side. There's a little bit of competition. If you take a look at SCTE224 and the use case of blackout, there's a competition coming from other formats in the US, IO2, for instance. So the decision we made also is like, again, we stick to our API, and we have a team called customer success, which can be instrumentals to also build connectors and help, the market and our customers to implement SCTE224 as well. So if we go into application and use cases, the concept that we have is like the contextualization engine. Okay, and SCTE224 is really helping with that. The idea we've got with the first application with Broadpeak.io is like we can get basically a source from our customers, and the customers can tell us what to do with that source. Okay, they can tell us, like a policy to apply for a special audience on a special time, right? And they give us, possibly a replacement content, can be another linear channels, can be a slate, can be a VOD. And our system is going to do all the manipulation and is going to deliver the manifest for every end user. Okay, so when we receive a streaming request, we take a look at like the source, we take a look at the condition, which we do the manipulation as it is expected, and we send that to the customer. We don't deal with the video itself. We just really focus on the manifest manipulation. So one use case, again, is the blackout that we have like deployed. The idea is, again, like we work with some distributors, which got, like a distribution contract with some programmers. So for example, you can be a virtual MVPD, you need to distribute ESPN. So you need to apply the blackout that ESPN wants you to apply. So what we do is like, we get the manifest from the distributors after they do the packaging and the encryption and all of that. We get, like out of band, the different rules for the blackout using SCTE224. And what we do is like, we basically manipulate the manifest to apply the blackout. Okay. So when a customers look for a stream on ESPN on that particular distributor platform, get to us, we do the manipulation, we give back the manifest, and then after, like the end user can get the video coming from the distributor itself. Okay. So now, if you think about that, like that contextualization engine help to do other use cases. And it's also based on the fact that we use SCTE224, and SCTE224 help with, like different criteria on the audience, different criteria for the actions. So it really helps to build other use cases with only one API. We got some use cases with regionalization, meaning that, like, again, you have like one linear channel at first, national, and you want to regionalize it. We have like customers, they have this use case for election day. So election day, you can watch CNN to get like the national results, but then also you want to know like who got elected on regionally. So, like at some part of the program, you can basically, like regionalize CNN to have like the local results. We have customers using our API for doing distribution management. Some of our customers, like they propose a pay-per-view event and they want to authorize or deauthorize some of the customers based on what they paid. So that's one of the use cases that we can do. Alerting system. In the US, you have what we call EAS. So when you have like a tornado around and you watch something on cable, you're supposed to have a message. So you stop the stream, you have a message telling you like there's a tornado, go to your basement. This is not enforced yet for OTT video services. It will at some point. I think the FCC is working on it. And we can help also in HLS and Dash to do that. Finally, there's also another use case coming up right now. It's like because SCTE224 help with scheduling, we can basically help people doing virtual linear channels. For example, everyone talk about fast, so it can also address the faster use case, and we add also advertisement if we have to. So just to finish, I want also to open a little bit the debate and to talk about like what's next and what is beyond content replacement. Good thing also with SCTE224, like again, it helps with scheduling, but what is interesting as well is like the metadata that we can use from inside the schedule. right? And one of the things that we are looking at is that in the future, we want also to move some part of our product line to Broadpeak IO. One of the things we do is like we do recording for, catch up, cloud PVR, this kind of stuff. And with the metadata you have in SCTE224, you can actually give some information of like what can be recorded or what cannot, right? So you can also tell if, some specific programs can be, like paused or not. And so we can basically, like have a lot of value in the relationship we've got with the player to tell the player what to do on some specific program. For instance, like we can also like help with ad skipping, some ad can be skipped, some ad cannot. And so we can help with that. The fact that we manage the audience, there's a lot of things that we can get in terms of statistics. And then also we can give a feedback to some programmers telling them like, oh, by the way, when you were doing your blackout, you use that content for the replacement. It didn't go very well with your audience. With that content, it did much more better, right? And so you can also like give a feedback to some programmers. Again, because we do SCTE224 is a scheduling API, you can also like imagine doing some personalized APG. So you can do one APG per user basically, and SCTE224 can help with that. And finally, because the next application we'll propose in the platform will be around targeted ads, SCTE224 help with this as well. Again, because, like as part of the scheduling, we know what we can, when we have ads and when we can replace the ads. And so in collaboration with SCTE35, we can also, like do targeted ad, or we can do also what we call regionalization, which is, like the insertion of regional ads on national content. So that was the 30 minutes I got for you today.